Well, good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here, and it brings back, for me, very warm memories of the first Donghae Forum. And I couldn't have imagined that day several years ago that the subject that we discussed that day would have turned into such an incredible story for Korea. I work all over the world, and of course the concept of shared value, which we discussed here at this forum in 2011, is something that's been talked about and worked on and adopted by companies all over the world. But I must tell you that the amount of energy and focus and progress in shared value in Korea, in my opinion, is second to any country. There's no other country that has embraced this idea as rapidly and as aggressively as I see here. And it's a tremendous thrill for me to be able this afternoon to award the first prizes in shared value to a bunch of incredible companies who have just done amazing things in a very short period of time. So I want to thank Donghae Forum for starting this movement, because it all started just a few years ago. And I'd also like to thank the Institute for Policy Studies to take the lead in creating this prize. And now I think we can tap into the Korean spirit of competition, and hopefully all of you are going to try to win this prize. And the more you try to win this prize, the better Korea is going to do as a country. So again, it's a great thrill for me to be here today. Thank you for all of you that have made this possible. I'm so honored and so excited to be here. What I would like to do in my brief keynote this morning is to talk about what we have learned about shared value, the kind of evolving learning of the key ideas. I'd like to share with you a set of examples from around the world, including some from Korea. And I'd like to talk about what we're learning about how you make this work and how you better integrate shared value with the rest of what a company must, of course, do. Now, it's interesting that this year's focus in this forum is on innovation and differentiation and creativity. And of course, in every economy, in any company, this is always the holy grail: how to innovate, how to differentiate, how to come up with new ideas and new ways of thinking. And we're going to hear a lot about that over the course of today and throughout this forum. But what I'd like to stress to all of you today is probably the biggest single opportunity for creative thinking and innovation and differentiation is coming not from the conventional concepts of marketing and product development that we've been all studying for so many years, but ultimately it's coming from the fusion between business and society. And that opportunity to differentiate in this area, I think, is still open ground. And the winners of the Shared Value Prize that you'll hear about this afternoon are the pioneers. But every single one of you in this room can innovate and differentiate in this way, in your business. I promise you. There's no doubt. All you have to do is understand the key ideas and then bring them into your company and your product, and you can be an innovator. So the idea of shared value really starts by trying to understand the relationship between a company and society. And traditionally, those two were separate. Companies ran a business, they made a profit, they created jobs, they made investments, they purchased goods and services. Companies were kind of involved in the economy. And then there was a society, and that was somebody else's job. It was a job of government. It was a job of public organizations to worry about society, to worry about health and the environment and nutrition and housing and all those social issues that we've come to understand are so critical. One of the unique things about the time we live in today is our awareness of a tremendous range of social issues. This is, of course, true in poorer countries, but even in Korea, there are a whole lot of issues in terms of moving the society forward and improving the life of the average person. We're aware of those issues now in a way that we never were before. Now, traditionally, again, that's not been the focus of business. Business worries about the economy. It worries about kind of the economic side. The social side is somebody else's job. But I think what we're coming to understand is that old model doesn't work. We're not making progress fast enough on all these social issues. And the only way I believe we're going to make progress is that we in business need to understand that actually this is our job too. And I also believe that we in business must understand that actually we have the opportunity in ways that government and NGOs often don't have to actually create solutions to social problems. And it's this ability to rethink the relationship between business and society that I think is the biggest opportunity for innovation we see in the world today. And I feel very confident about that from the huge number of examples and companies that I come in contact with all around the world. So let's talk quickly about the evolution of thinking about the relationship between business and society, the way businesses historically have approached social issues and community issues, and then we'll talk a little bit about the power of shared value, how we're learning how to put it into practice, and then some of the really important lessons that we learn as we see companies around the world struggle with this issue. The traditional way that businesses have connected with society was through philanthropy. You ran the business made money, and it took some of the money from the business and gave it to support social needs. That was the way business started engaging in society. Typically called philanthropy. Many corporations have foundations. They make donations. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for corporations to be philanthropic. It's a good thing for managers and employees of corporations to give back as well. Philanthropy is good. It's a good role for us to play in society. But I think what businesses came to understand is that the philanthropy, as important as it could be, ultimately didn't make much impact. Yes, the company could give money. Yes, you could volunteer, give your time. But ultimately, that often didn't lead to a big impact. It also didn't address the concerns about business that have been growing in the population, in the average citizens. Concerns about ethics, about the behavior of corporations, about the harm that corporations were sometimes causing to society. So the next stage was to move beyond just giving. Not that it's bad, but to move beyond giving and say we have to look more broadly at how we engage society as a corporation. And the kind of next stage was what's commonly called corporate social responsibility, CSR. And I think everybody in this room knows what CSR is. You have CSR programs. You have CSR initiatives. And this is spread around the world. Virtually every major company anywhere in the world now has a CSR program. What's the idea? The idea here is that CSR is more than just giving. It's about compliance, ethical behavior, following the law, following the spirit of law, behaving responsibly. It's about being a good citizen in the community in which you operate, or the communities in which you operate, participating, being helpful. Corporate social responsibility is about the idea of sustainability. Don't destroy the future in order to progress today. Don't ruin the environment. Don't act in ways that are unsustainable. Most major companies today have sustainability programs to try to make sure that they are mitigating the harm of environmental impact or other kinds of impacts on the community. Corporate social responsibility was a great step forward. I think it's raised the standard of behavior in many companies. But unfortunately, it's only a next step. It's not a solution. Why? Because corporate social responsibility is basically about reducing harm, not about creating value. And yes, we must raise our standard in business of responsibility. We must raise our standard of citizenship. But ultimately, that's not going to create solutions. That's not going to really move the ball forward. It's going to help improve the reputation of business. But ultimately, the fundamental view of business in society has to do not with our reputation and whether we give money and do good things. It's actually what we do as businesses. And that's where the idea of shared value comes in. Social responsibility is about reducing harm, being a good citizen. Shared value is about creating social value through the business. With the products of the business, with the way the business operates, creating social benefit and economic benefit together. Creating shared value is actually just capitalism. But it's using capitalism with a broader understanding of the opportunity. The recognition that capitalism, which is about meeting needs and doing it profitably, is a very powerful tool for addressing societal problems. And if business can do that, and it can do that using business models, not charity models or government taxation models, then we can create real solutions. Because if we can create shared value, we can scale it. The big problem with most of the efforts to address social problems in society today all around the world is they're good efforts, and maybe they make a difference, but they can't scale. They can't serve millions and tens of hundreds of millions of people. They can only be little projects because there's not enough money to make donations and to take money from the government budget. The power of shared value is that if we can address social issues like nutrition or health or the environment or housing or clean water or whatever the issue is, if we can address that through the business, then we have the opportunity to scale and to create solutions, not just nice projects. This is the opportunity of shared value. This is what we're seeing all over the world. Companies that can rethink the opportunity in their own business to make an impact and meet needs better are businesses that are growing and innovating faster than most of their peers. This is the opportunity for shared value. Now, why is this possibility suddenly appeared? Well, it actually hasn't suddenly appeared. It's been there all along, but we haven't been able to see it. Why? Because too many of us in business thought of ourselves as too narrowly meeting economic needs. We weren't able to see that social needs are the biggest needs in the world. The traditional economic needs that most companies meet, those are saturated. We've already done that. But these societal needs are huge. And they're open opportunities. And if we can find how our particular business can tap in to that crucial, huge societal need, all of a sudden we open up a lot of new territory. Here are a couple of kind of critical ideas that I think most businesses overlooked. Number one, where there's a social deficit in your community or any other community, this affects the business too. It's not just affecting society, it also affects the business. If you can't hire people that are skilled, this is not only bad for the community because people can't get good jobs, but it's also bad for you because you can't hire who you need, the kind of employees you need. If there's poor health in the community, this not only affects the community, it also affects the business in terms of the ability to retain employees and have employees be productive. What we found is that there's no separation between social needs and business. The two are connected, but we overlooked that. We took social for granted rather than saw it as our responsibility in business to really understand. And as I already said earlier, these social needs, clean water, feeding the billions of people in this world efficiently with the resources we have, improving environmental quality, improving health, these are the big needs. And we haven't in business too often enough really recognized those needs as the real opportunity. Because we've been too stuck in our traditional definition of what our business was and what needs we were meeting. And we didn't see these opportunities. So shared value has created an enormous opportunity for innovation. Because it's like opening up a whole new world that any business, every business, can take advantage of. Now, those of you that know the shared value concept well, what we understand is that shared value can be created in three ways. One is with your product. Whatever your product is, whatever the business you're in, your product can actually often meet social needs. That's step number one. Step number two, you can create shared value in how you operate your value chain. How you source, how you manage logistics, how you work with your own employees, how you use resources in the production process. Shared value emerges from there as well. And then at level 3 of shared value is the ability to, by improving the surrounding environment in the communities in which you operate, you can actually make yourself more productive and more efficient while raising the community at the same time. There are many, many examples of shared value. Here's a very vivid example of Dow Chemical. I think Dow is among the largest chemical companies in the world. They may be the largest. They didn't think about shared value. They were really good at technology and chemistry, and they just went into the lab every day and came up with more products using kind of their traditional mindset. But then one day, the CEO said, wait a minute. Let's think about what the big needs are in the world, and let's try to apply our expertise and our technology to meet those real needs that are not being solved. Let's not just focus on the traditional needs that we've been serving for many, many years. Let's think about some new needs. You know where they found the needs? They took them from the Millennium Development Goals. They looked at the Millennium Development Goals and they said, which of those goals could we do something about in our company? And every business unit was said, okay, you business unit, every single business unit, you think about how your business unit with your skills can actually meet one of those Millennium Development Goals or help meet those goals. And this is still going on, but Dow now has created several huge products. Total new innovation, totally new to them, just by thinking about this question in a different way. And here's a few examples. Here's one of your own companies, CEO sitting in the front row. I spent some time with Dr. Wang this morning. Tremendous business leader. Here's a company that's seeing their infrastructure, their telecom infrastructure, their internet infrastructure, as not just traditional telecom infrastructure, but as a tool for bringing many social services and public services to remote areas. A whole new idea about what the industry and what the company does. Opening up giant new markets that have not traditionally been even thought about in the telecom business, because their job was just to, provide infrastructure to make phone calls and, do internet, rather than connect with society. Marvelous example, right here from Korea. In terms of the value chain, what we're finding is that companies have given up huge opportunities for innovation in how they operate. A couple of examples. Now, here's a hotel company. What's a hotel company have to do with society? Well, it turns out that they have a lot to do with energy use and water use. And they were able to, by starting to think of what could we do through our company that would actually make a big difference, that mattered to our customers, they started an initiative which started out as just a little thing. But now it's probably the biggest cost-reducing innovation they've ever had in their company. And how did they get the idea? By thinking about societal problems, not just about being a hotel. They stretched their idea of what they could achieve, of what they could accomplish by thinking more broadly about the communities in which they were operating and what the needs and concerns of those communities were. Here's a famous pharmaceutical medical device company who started thinking of their employees differently as people that actually if they could help those employees be healthier and have better health status, this would have a huge positive impact on the company. So all of a sudden, this company started to really focus heavily on disease prevention and disease management for their own workforce. And this is the highest ROI they've ever gotten on an investment in the shortest time. The time and energy they invested in worrying about improving the health of their employees and their families turned out to be the big ROI, not inventing a new drug. They stretched. How can what we do with our employees and our suppliers and our logistics and our resource use, how can we do this in ways that will actually drive the business but also meet an important social need? Here's an example of, again, another wonderful Korean company, CEO sitting in this front row, that you all know well, that has been sourcing agricultural inputs for a long time. And they always thought about it in the, like every company that sources agricultural inputs, they go out and they buy stuff on the agricultural markets, and that's it. That's their job. They just buy. But CJ said, well, wait a minute. What if we can't just ignore the communities and the farming areas from which we buy? And if we actually thought about those communities and their problems, we could actually source much more productively and ensure a better supply and better quality of produce. In this case, the chili peppers that you all know so much about. And in the process, look at what they did to the communities. They raised the company, they raised the community at the same time, because these things are always connected. If the community isn't doing well, the company ultimately is constrained in terms of how well it can do. That's the concept of shared value. Now here's a similar example from Japan in the green tea business, where a tea company started transforming its whole attitude towards working with farmers and raising the supply of their raw material. So a similar example to the CJ case. Here's another wonderful example from Korea of a company that, basically they make cars. And they distribute cars. And they have dealers all around the world. And that was what they did. That was what every car company did. But when they started thinking more broadly about the effect that they can have on societies in which they're operating, they started realizing that actually there was a weakness in the communities in which they wanted to sell cars that would actually constrain their ability to grow. And this Dream Center program was created. It started in Ghana. Now it's spreading to a number of other countries. To actually, the auto company is out there training local citizens in how to repair cars. And all of a sudden, people who had no real economic future all of a sudden have a future and have a great job and are earning a better income. And that's starting to build a infrastructure in the community that's really synergistic to the really growth of this company as it tries to build its business. This is the kind of thing companies didn't think about until they started asking themselves, how can we create shared value? How can we make our business more productive or more efficient or faster growing in a way that actually benefits the communities in which we operate and the societal challenges those communities face, because these things are synergistic. That's the concept of shared value. Now, what are some of the key ideas we've learned about shared value in just a few minutes, because we have such limited time? First thing we've learned is that although there are 3 levels of shared value, product, value chain, business environment, and the community, the 3 often go together. The best shared value initiatives sort of do all 3 at the same time. This is a wonderful example from India. Novartis is a major pharmaceutical company, and they're building a gigantic new business in India in rural areas that were completely unserved markets. They didn't sell anything to those markets. There's billions of people living in places like this, but they never sold anything to these people at all, because their traditional business model wasn't aligned with the needs and the realities. So they modified their product, their packaging, the way they sold the product. They went away from their traditional sales model. They started working not just on their own operation, but also on the community health systems, training the doctors that were going to be serving the people that they were trying to reach. And by putting those 3 things together, they've built a tremendous, gigantic opportunity. And you know what? As they've done this, they've learned things about their core business that they can do better. They were stretched away from their traditional way of competing. And that's how innovation happens. That's where creativity comes from, where a company confronts a different challenge. And through innovating to deal with that challenge, it comes up with ideas that are very powerful in its core. And we see this with shared value all the time. With shared value, we find increasingly businesses have to start partnering with government and NGOs because those actors can provide crucial skills and resources necessary for making shared value strategies work. And here's just some examples of the kind of partnerships we're starting to see. In many of the Korean examples that I am learning about, and we'll talk about this afternoon, you're going to see those partnerships. You're going to see actually a major business working collaboratively with government entities on initiatives that actually are exciting growth opportunities for the business, but they wouldn't be possible without government doing its job right, providing the necessary infrastructure, improving the rules or regulations. Government and business often are now going to be working much more together, I think. It's been traditionally adversarial, suspicious. Business doesn't like government, government worries about business. Now what we're coming to see is the real value creation in society often comes in areas where we can harness the strengths of both of those actors. So shared value strategies often look like that. And finally, I want to just go back to my earlier slide. Traditionally there's been the philanthropy, CSR, and CSV. Those have been three separate things. But the best companies at shared value are not only creating shared value business models, but they're amplifying and improving their success by also harnessing their philanthropic effort and their CSR in a consistent way. So you just see some examples. One of the things that Novartis is doing in India to open up this gigantic new market is they're doing a lot of education. And they're spending a lot of money educating local citizens about health and about healthy living and about things that would traditionally be just philanthropy. But they're combining that at the same time with new business models so that ultimately those things come together. So what we're starting to understand is that to be a real shared value company, you've got to get all the sort of assets of the company aligned in opening up these new business models to meet these important societal needs. And that's where ultimately the real success comes from. The best shared value companies create some focus. They don't try to deal with every societal problem that they can come up with in their locations. Here's a great example of Nestle, a company that's actually said that their biggest impact, given who they are, is in these three areas. And so the Nestle Shared Value program is really focused in those areas. Not that they can't make some progress elsewhere, but this is where their real attention is. Shared value is becoming critical to strategy. It's very hard today to compete better on conventional definitions of competition. We've already learned how to do that. Competitors have caught up. The companies that are often the most differentiated and the most innovative have created this fusion of business and society. Here's an example of our largest grocery store chain in North America in terms of profitability and market capitalization, and you can see the example. It's both it's social, it's business, but those two are fused together in a very powerful way. We're starting to see that the best companies today are really redefining their purpose, their vision statement, their mission statement. Traditionally, when we've thought about corporate purpose, we've defined that in terms of our product, the products we produce. We are a food company. We publish textbooks. That's the way traditional business definitions and vision statements have been crafted. Increasingly, we're finding the most exciting companies that are moving and gaining position and winning the competitive battle are redefining their purpose around the fundamental societal needs that they're meeting. So Nestle used to call itself a food and beverage company. They don't call themselves that anymore. That's kind of the old way of thinking about who they are. The new way of thinking about Nestle is they're a nutrition, health, and wellness company. Think of the difference between the left and the right. If you think of yourself as a food company, what does that open up in terms of opportunity? Well, you have to find ways of getting people to buy more of your food, so how do you do that? If you think of yourself as a nutrition and health and wellness company, all of a sudden, many new opportunities open up for differentiation. That's what shared value allows you to create in terms of opportunity. And you can see these other examples. I think every company in this room ought to go back and look at their mission statement and vision statement again. I actually read quite a few of those in preparation for today's session. And I think, although there's a lot of movement in the shared value direction, we can move even faster if we can actually rethink our purpose. Why does this company exist? What fundamental need is it really trying to meet? Getting away from the old style, this is what we do. And thinking about the real question, which is, what impact do we have? And this unlocks opportunities for shared value. I believe, and I'm very sure about this, that we are in a period now where the whole concept of business is beginning to change. I think it's coming from within businesses. I think it's coming from the young people who are joining companies that have a much greater sense of societal concern. It's coming from a new generation of CEOs who understand that the traditional corporate social responsibility approach is fine, but it's not the ultimate opportunity for them to lead. And I see a day coming where business is going to be seen as just as important for society as all the other institutions, if not more so. That's our opportunity in business. That's what all of you sitting in this room, you can do. And this ultimately, and it's kind of strange, but this is actually where the real innovation and growth is going to come from. Now, yes, we have experts here in this conference. You're going to hear a lot of great ideas about how to differentiate better, how to innovate faster. But I simply offer shared value as an enormously powerful vehicle to amplify and drive that spirit and that innovation. And I think Korea is a hotbed of opportunity for shared value. I congratulate all of the companies in this room that are moving down this path. And I hope you'll all join me later today in congratulating the winners of this first prize. And I hope all of you will be jealous that you didn't win and that you're going to try to win next year. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for this wonderful, exciting day. Thank you.
네, 기조 강연을 통해 귀한 메시지 주신 마이클 포터 교수님께 감사드립니다.